7:03. And I don't know if you have the agenda in front of you, but I'm going to reorganize the agenda a little bit, if you don't mind, because Peter is here and I don't want him to have to sit through the whole meeting. So if we could have everybody say their name and their status. If you're a visitor, welcome. If you're a member, say so. And then we'll have a roll call and an approval of the minutes. And then we'll go to Peter so that he can tell us what he's up to. Jane Freed, acting chair.
Amy Acton, member.
Barbara Vaughn, member.
Okay.
Mark
Guest
Ferrara, staff member.
and guests.
Janine
Sharon.
Canadia.
Oh, so, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Janine Canadia, visiting.
Okay,
Sharon Canoyer, Superintendent of Region 19, visiting.
thank you. And Velda,
Velda Alfred Abney, visiting guest.
thank you very much. And Felicia, just say hello to everybody, please.
Hi, I'm Felicia.
Okay, that's
I'm
the roll
Katie.
call.
I'm youth services staff, visitor / I'm not officially staff to this, but here I am.
Do we need an official structure for you, or can we just invite you? I'd rather invite you. Okay, Monica, have people read the minutes? Did we have minutes from the last meeting?
Yes, so the minutes were sent out with the email of the agenda.
Okay. Would anybody like to move the approval of the minutes or suggest changes? Amy,
I move to approve.
Hold on, we actually cannot vote on anything because we don't have a quorum.
don't have a quorum. Okay, so anyway, the minutes exist. Let the current minutes reflect that, and we don't have a quorum, so we can't vote. All right, now, not being able to vote, it presents a particular problem, but it's not a problem right now. I would like to introduce Peter Dart to you. Peter is the new superintendent of schools for the Mansfield schools, and we are very happy to have him, and he is into a lot of projects that are very of great interest to the rest of us. So Peter, welcome. Nice to have you. And why don't you just tell us what you're all about?
Yeah, well, thank you. And I want to acknowledge my colleague Sharon from EO Smith. I'm not sure if she was going to share some of the work too. So I don't want to take all that time. But it's great to be here, and thank you for your service. I think eye-opening journey into central office is to see how much the community is supported by people like yourself, dedicated members, volunteering to serve on commissions and boards. So thank you. I think that we need that partnership, and I look forward to more than just a one and done, but an ongoing relationship with this commission. And so I prepared a slide deck just because I wasn't sure how formal and what people were interested in hearing. I'd like to go through some of the slides. I'll be quick, but I also would be interested in hearing your questions. And so please feel free to interject, ask questions, add to it as we go. So I'm not sure if I have permission to share my slides. Do I? I could just try. Looks like I do.
You do. Okay, good.
Okay. Can you see?
Yes. Do
you see the human rights, Mansfield?
Yep.
Okay, good. I'm going to launch into the deck then. So for those of you who know the district, you know that last year the Board of Education adopted a district development plan that really is the foundation of everything that we do. It's 6 core beliefs that are bookended with 2 very important components. And number 1 is that we lead with equity and go through the 6 core beliefs, and we bookend it with grow educators. And both of those 2 core beliefs really are driving a lot of what I'm sharing tonight. To lift those core beliefs, we have 3 key drivers or big bets that will help us lift equity and supporting the whole child through these ideas of how we know students, how we support the whole child through SEL, social emotional learning, through tiered supports. And ultimately, it's about ensuring deep learning. And so we know that in order to get to deep learning, we have to have a relationship with the child. We have to know the family. We have to contextualize it in terms of relevancy. And then that last step of rigor or deep learning is really the benefit of forming those relationships. And a lot of that has to do with equity, has to do with social emotional learning. And so when we think about our core beliefs, we think of these three key drivers and how we lift up various components of our work through the development plan. One of the most important parts of the core beliefs is leading with equity, which gives us as a district our equity statement. And so I'd like to read it to you. I think it's super important. It's a statement that we continue to go back to unpack, to look at those concepts and words and think about the practices and the experiences of our students, of our family members, of staff, teachers, and just the systems as a whole. So lead with equity. We believe that children must be supported to learn and develop in a safe, anti-racist environment, free from discrimination, bias, and prejudice against all people, where conscious efforts and intentional actions ensure equitable opportunities. That was not an easy statement to write. It was not an easy concept to have the Board of Education and district leaders come together to try to craft a statement that encapsulates everything that we believe in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But it was a beginning point. And I'll just share my experience as we were drafting and talking about it. The board had a lot of conversations around the word anti-racist. That was not an easy thing for people to talk about, to put into a core belief. But it was a necessary step, and we've done a lot of work with Courageous Conversations. And one of the norms that we've agreed upon is to live in discomfort, right? That it's okay to be certain or on the journey in this equity work that we do. And so I share it tonight because I'm proud of it. Not proud that we need to do the work, but proud that we've started. And that starting point is sometimes a statement, right? It gives us common language. So I've referred to the district development plan. So this is year one that we've completed. We're on to year two. In this district development plan, we started to think about what are the actions and indicators. And step one for us as a district was to do an equity audit and then start to think about what did that audit do. So we partnered with Insight Education Group that came into the district, met with family members, students, teachers, community members, board members, looked at artifacts and data, looked at how we spent our time, looked at how we spent our money, looked at who was in what classes. So looking at enrichment and advanced classes, and really started to think about access and opportunity. Who has access? Who has opportunity here in terms of this lens of equity? By the way, I can send these slides, and if any member wants additional information, please reach out. So I'd like to share the highlights of that equity audit with you. I think it's important. And number one, I think it's important to celebrate the wins, right? There were things that the equity audit unpacked that we as a district and community are doing really well. And then there are the things that we need to work on. And it's okay. Some of it does bring discomfort, but if we don't name it, we'll never address it. So that's really the process that was behind this. So in terms of celebrations, the equity audit actually applauded the fact that we had a core belief, leading with equity, that we had a social emotional learning framework, that really addressed equity in many different ways. That all of our stakeholders identified it as key work, that we were pretty unified in saying, yep, that is a priority. Looking at our budget, and looking at our time and our professional learning, the audit noted that we had increased our supports for the work. That there were clear through lines in our professional learning plan throughout the year that aligned to equity. And that we started to look at discipline data in a way to help us learn who are the students being sent to the office, if you will, that are being recognized as those who have infractions. We looked at suspension rates. And so beginning that disaggregation of data was an important step. And we realized that there were patterns in there that we had to address. Staff overall, and this probably comes as no surprise, loves Mansfield Public Schools. People are committed to our work. And that's a really positive thing when you have to work on something really hard, to know that people are invested in our students and families and in our district work. We also noted in our focus groups that we were unified in wanting to hire diverse staff members, that there was clear recognition that our staff does not reflect the diversity of our community, and that's not okay, and that we're going to do everything we can to work on that. So therefore, we also recognize that there is an ongoing recruitment plan to address that. Clearly needed some support and help to maybe embolden that approach, but the fact that we had the plan, people recognize that. And that actually, when you looked at all of our staff, that's certified and non-certified, 11% identify as non-white. And while that number is small, you may be surprised to know that that is actually really good when we compare ourselves to other small districts. Again, it is not a place where we want to stay and pat ourselves on the back, but it is actually a nod that this is a district that does have diverse members. So 11% is a good starting point, if you will. And if we were to compare ourselves to smaller communities or comparable communities in Eastern Connecticut, that's far above where they are. So those are the celebrations, the key findings, and this is our work this year. We need to elevate our definition of equity. So we're going to be sharing that statement. We're going to be spending time with our families. We're going to do promotional events where we put it in our email signatures. We want people to know that we do have an equity statement and that it is driving a lot of our work. We also want to make sure that we're using data that is disaggregated to make sure that we know how our Black and Brown students are doing compared to other students. How are our Latinx students doing? How are male versus female students or non-binary students doing? We need to develop the capacity and muscle to have those conversations in a way that's respectful, but also help us identify patterns that need to be addressed. It is kind of tricky, by the way, when we're in a small district and our N numbers are so small that sometimes you are talking about just one student who might fit into a subgroup, but that's still one student needs to be acknowledged, and we need to be sensitive to making sure, again, going back to that access opportunity part. We see an achievement gap with our Latinx Hispanic students. They are not performing at the same rate as other subgroups and overall populations. There is a variability in perception and practice in our advanced classes and enrichment classes. So when we look at who is in the advanced math courses in the middle school, we want to make sure that the enrollment in that class is reflective of the diversity enrollment of the district. And if it's not, we want to start working on why is that? And what are the barriers and opportunities that we have? We noticed there is variability in the implementation of just social emotional learning programs and progressive discipline. We heard loud and clear from our students, especially in the middle school, that they do not think that there are consistent practices from class to class, from staff member to staff member. And that inconsistency can lend itself to inequity. There's inconsistent practices with our MTSS, our multi-tiered systems of support. Oops. Overall, that multi-tiered system is really how we proactively support students who may need additional opportunities so that they're on par and on grade level. So the equity audit, and it was a far more inclusive document than what I've given you a highlight of, was an important step of acknowledging that there's work to be done. Let me pause there to see if there's any questions about the equity audit, because then I want to talk about some early action steps that we've taken based on the audit.
Peter, I don't have any questions, but I really want us to get to where do you see us working with you and how do you think that might look?
Yeah.
So if you could work that into whatever you're going to talk about next, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah. So that's a great segue. Thank you, Jane. So we have formed a diversity, equity, inclusion advisory team. So you can support us by, number one, asking about it. Jane is a member of that team. We'll be meeting at least 3 times this year. And really it's feet to the fire of helping us monitor what are we doing to lead with equity? How are we making progress? What are the opportunities? And again, to promote the work. We need to continually think about that. There's a temptation, especially in education, to have a checkbox, right? Oh yeah, we did equity last year. We're moving on. And equity is never a destination. It's a journey. It's something that we just have to build into our culture, that we will always talk about equity, that there's always things for us to do. And then just to help us think about the professional learning opportunities that we need to continue to build out. And here's where I think the commission can help us with. I put in an activity called Taco Night. I don't know if you're familiar with that short article written by Paul Gorski, but it's a great example of how equity, diversity, inclusion work isn't always about Black and brown students. It's not always about race, ethnicity. It sometimes can be about our calendars and traditions that we have in our schools. And so I know the commission had conversations around Juneteenth. And when I look at our district and town calendars, I still see that there is work to be done, right? I'm not happy that Juneteenth is not officially recognized in our collective bargaining groups and our school calendar. It is something we're going to need to work on. I think it's also, we're challenged by vacations that pair nicely with certain religious views and practices, but again, it's not inclusive. So I think of like the Friday before April break is Good Friday. Why is that a holiday? Why is that a vacation? And why are we not thinking about supporting our families that celebrate Ramadan and Eid, Rosh Hashanah? There's a list, it probably better than I do, but we need to develop a sensitivity that shifts our traditional Judaic Christian calendar holidays to be more inclusive. And so I think of like the town's celebration around winter, and you see Christmas trees and Santa Claus and things like that. These are hard things to do. The article Taco Night, I think, is a great gateway into a conversation. And so, Jane, I challenge you and your commission to read that article. And here's my question to you. What are our taco nights here in Mansfield? I asked the leaders in our district to read the article and to have a conversation. And it was great. We talked about Thanksgiving. We talked about heritage dinners that perpetuate some stereotypical ideas around culture and pair them with food or clothing. And I'm not saying that's wrong, right? You know, we all enjoy the diversity of culinary treats and restaurants and food, but we've got to be careful with sometimes we create these iconic events that perpetuate colonialism or that perpetuates a predominant portion of our population, but it's not inclusive. So that's a gateway to the conversation. But Jane and other commission members, I ask for your support. I ask for your participation. There's always room at the table at our diversity, equity, inclusion teams. We know that we're not perfect. We don't launch perfect, but we're willing to engage in that meaningful discourse that means that we're prepared to have discomfort. We're prepared to experience non-closure, that we're not going to have all the answers. And if there's something we can pair with the commission, like celebrating Juneteenth and having that be a more inclusive and intentional day that Mansfield Public Schools leads, so be it. I would be happy to do that. So I'm going to stop sharing there. And Jane, I'll email the slide deck if anyone wants that, or please just reach out and email me directly, and I'm happy to share that with you.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any comments? I'm very aware, Peter, of the fact that educators have a certain vocabulary that is not commonly used in the wider public. So if Peter said anything that people didn't quite understand what that meant, or have any questions about that, or observations, comments, please feel free to speak right up. Everybody, not just the members of the commission. What do you think? Would you be happy to send your child to a school that operates under these guidelines? And besides head nods, I would like to hear a few words from people. Now my teacher self is coming out. Velda, what do you think?
Hi, everyone. Hi.
I did appreciate what Dr. Dart said in terms of the Juneteenth stuff, because just this year, Terrence and I was talking that next year we were not planning on sending our children to school on Juneteenth if it fell on a school day. So definitely appreciate hearing that. Do appreciate the work that you all are doing. I think it's awesome. Just kind of reflecting about my experience with the Mansfield school system with Shania and now with Riley. I'm appreciative of the school system and the work that have been done and whatnot. We have never had any issues, not saying that there isn't. Other families haven't had issues or whatnot, but with the elementary school and the middle school, our experience have been great. With high school, we have had some, not personally with Shania, but with hearing stuff that's happening and whatnot in the school systems and whatnot. But I know the principal there is, actively doing work to make E.O. Smith anti-racist. Definitely appreciate that term, working towards being more anti-racist, right? So yeah, good stuff so far.
Thank you. Any other comments, observations?
Good evening. I'm new
Hi,
to
Sabrina,
here.
you're new and you missed the intros. Tell us who you are.
I apologize. Had some technology problems. I'm a speech language pathologist, been a resident of Mansfield for 15 years now, and I went to UConn, so really love it around here. Have a little boy, 6 years old. Great presentation, Dr. Dart. I would like it noted that in addition to race and culture, disabilities also falls under the equity umbrella, so I want to make sure that that's definitely at the forefront of, at the new school. There's going to be a whole lot of changes. I also was thinking that in the past, a special education parent-teacher organization had been mentioned. So I was hoping that that would be something that would come up in discussion in the future.
Thank you for pointing that out. You're absolutely correct. And I appreciate your support and work with kids. I think it's super important. And that was actually part of our conversation about an equity statement. Some people were challenged by saying anti-racist, and they felt that was limiting. And then there was conversations around discrimination against all people. And as you know, there's a long list of people who have been harmed and discriminated, who've been disenfranchised and not included. And so that is part of the journey, right? How do we lift up each and every person and acknowledge that there are many, many different ways that we unfortunately have mistreated and shut people out of opportunity and access. So certainly ability and exceptionality is one of them. Yes, right.
Thank you. Katie, go ahead.
I just want to appreciate that you got feedback from the students, particularly the middle school students, and acknowledging that feedback in their experience of feeling as though disciplinary action is not always the same across the border. I know working with many middle schoolers in our role that, we hear that sometimes on an individual basis, but particularly when we're working with groups of middle schoolers, things that frequently come up are around dress code and kind of that differential treatment of dress code, not just based on whether they are cisgender or not, but based on body size and body type and individuals' experience with that. And so I appreciate getting that feedback from the middle schoolers, acknowledging their lived experience and looking at how do we do better. Because that's one of the hardest things for any district to say, is to say we do need to do better, as opposed to just doing that pat on the back of look at us, we're doing great. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, thank you. And please share as best you can. Whenever kids say things in surveys, we pay attention to it. I know from my work at Goodwin, there was one student who commented, who said in a survey, I wish there were more teachers that look like me. And I don't know who that person was, but I can only imagine what that meant, and the courage and the sense of agency and voice that child had to put that in the survey. I thought was super powerful. In our SEL Institute that we shared with staff this summer, we opened up with some data and we used student comments from the survey, and staff were shocked. We have students who say, I do not have any friends. I don't have an adult connection. That's work to be done. And it does have to do with inclusion, equity. Kids need to see themselves. They need to feel safe and trusted, and that they connect with people. So thank you, Katie.
Go ahead, Janine.
Just real quick, I've worked with Mr. Dart and at Goodwin, and went through the SEL training this summer, and I think it should be mandatory for all staff, high school, middle school, and elementary school. I'm a longtime advocate for people with disabilities. I'm a special ed paraeducator at Goodwin. I've worked as caseload in the state of Florida. I come from a family who has, the white European background, but I'm married to someone from India. So I deal with mixed race issues as well at elementary school and as middle school and high school. So I'm fully aware. But I'm very glad to see movement as a community member and as a parent in terms of diversity, equity, inclusiveness. But in all honesty, and Mr. Dart understands when I say this, we've got a long way to go. It's just a stepping stone, and it is very uncomfortable. And I try to help out with the, and I think Velda, with the CAB program over at the high school. I'm trying to be involved with that, and Amy, which is Cultural Awareness Brigade. So I'm glad that all of the communities, the whole community and the schools are trying to meld together and get on that same page, because as Mr. Dart said, you could just check off that box. That's very easy, but you got to keep it rolling. So that's where I want to kind of help and step in.
Thank you. Amy, go ahead.
I'm curious, Peter, do you know whether or not EO has conducted a similar?
I don't know.
'Cause I don't, Felicia, do you remember, have we been, I don't think we have had somebody outside come in and do. Now with Sharon, we're still here, so I'm not trying to catch it without Sharon being here to respond to that, but it would be interesting to have an outside committee come in and do something similar at EO Smith.
Yeah, I would encourage it. It's a starting point. It's not an end point. And what's interesting, Insight Education Group has shared that they're not doing equity audits unless the district signs on to a professional learning plan that's coupled with it, because it can be one of those check the boxes, you did it, but if you don't understand like how to use it, you are just taking a moment in time and kind of checking the box of like, yeah, we'll go down this equity audit. And the diversity, equity, inclusion team that we're creating, while the equity audit findings are a starting point, I don't want to be distracted, because we could go through that list very quickly and like, yep, we solved all the problems.
Right, absolutely. What was the name of the group again? I teach, I'm curious because I am a teacher at EO Smith, and I don't remember having seen this. We did equity training in the fall of 2020, but we haven't had anything since. So I'm just curious.
Oh yeah.
What
Yeah.
was?
It's Insight Education Group.
Okay, thank you.
If you email me, I can send you a contact. I will recommend Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain. If you want a quick, fun read that has kind of theoretical pedagogy and then grab and go for teachers, it's a great book. And what's really powerful about this book about culturally responsive teaching is it really connects it with brain-based research and a simple notion that it's about relationships. It is simply, you want to be culturally responsive, have a good relationship with your kids, listen to them, spend time getting to know them. And chances are you're going to make connections for that kid to have a pathway that will lead to like the deep learning and to the significant teaching that, you know, we all want to do. But again, without recognizing that culturally relevant part, we're missing an opportunity with many of our students.
Thank you.
I'd just like to throw in my 2 cents here. I think that one of the critical elements that nobody pays much attention to, but is fundamental, is that everybody has to learn to talk about this and tolerate their own discomfort. And I just wrote a thing about talking about difference. It's not a mystery, it's a skill set. Yeah. And I think everybody needs that skill set. All the teachers need it, the kids need it, the student leaders need it, everybody, because we all have to recognize this is hard to talk about. Nobody said it was going to be easy, but it's very important. And let's work on it from a competency base rather than a let's guess and hope it works out base.
Right.
So I think that's something that deliberation and discourse has been doing a lot within certain groups of people are attending those regularly, but I don't think we still have as much buy-in from administration as we used to.
Yeah, well, I think we keep working on it. I think it seems to me everything is kind of spreading out throughout the town, and throughout the rest of the meeting, you're going to see some other things spreading out. So I think we're moving, and even in August, we're moving, and I'm very excited about that.
Yeah.
Other comments, questions? Anybody?
Could you confirm your email address, Mr.
Yeah. Can I put it in the chat? Is that helpful?
That'd be great.
Okay.
And Mr. Dr. Dart, I would like to ask you, how do you like to be addressed? Because I don't want to be inappropriate, which I usually am.
Yeah, thank you for actually asking, because I meant to correct that before. I am not a doctor. And I love it when people use my first name, Peter.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We need the permission so we don't assume.
Yeah, yep. No, and that's part of the journey, right?
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have any summative comments you'd like to make before we move on to the rest of the agenda?
Please invite me again. I'll put these meetings on on my calendar, and I'd like to just sit in as a visitor guest, or however you phrase that in the beginning. And like I said, look for more information about our team, the diversity, equity, inclusion teams, and then be an advocate. Enter into those hard conversations. Disagreement is okay. That's how we grow. And I look forward to having many great conversations that challenge our thinking. And I think if the prize is that we are more inclusive and that our families see themselves in our school system and in our work, we all benefit from that. And so kudos to you guys. And I'm going to sit in and listen for a little bit. I do have another engagement, so I can't stay for the whole meeting, but I will be sure to put future meetings on my calendar.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I'm going to tell the rest of you that we are in a situation where we don't have a quorum, so we can't do anything official. But we do have a lot of just information to share, and I'd like to do that. You all know that Glenn has now resigned, and so I am the acting chair, but I can't be the chair until we can vote on it, which we can't do today. So anyway, here I am. That's one thing. We will need a vice chair, so think about that if you'd like to be vice chair. That historically has meant you run meetings when the chair isn't there, but it could mean anything. So kind of like vice president. And let me see today I got a phone call through the Downtown Partnership. We are going to have a booth at the Celebrate Mansfield event. Barbara, you've taken responsibility for that. And the NAACP of Wyndham Willimantic wants to start a youth group, and they're having trouble finding enough youth. So they wanted to know if they can't participate in a Mansfield event unless they partner with somebody, and would they like to partner with us? And I said, why not? And they said, oh, wonderful. So they will be partnering with us. They're going to have a table, and I told them wear their t-shirts and figure out how you're going to get out from behind your table and talk to people who walk by, but they'll be there and they will be recruiting youth. I don't know how they're defining youth, whether it's high school kids only or whether they're looking for college kids, because there is an NAACP chapter at UConn. But anyway, I just took the liberty of saying, sure, we'd love to collaborate with them. And I know a lot of them, so they're going to be there, and that's exciting. That's one thing that happened today. And
Jane, if I may just follow up on that quickly, the NAACP had reached out to me last fall about forming a group specifically at EO, and asked me if I would be the advisor. But as I've already got so many other activities, that was impossible. But I'm delighted to hear then that they're going to be sharing a table with us. That's going to be great.
yeah, no, they would have their own table. That's even better. But right next to us. They have, apparently the national group has a minimum number of people to do one of these chapters, and it's 20 people. So I don't know how they're going to handle that, but we'll find that out shortly. And they can't seem to get anybody interested from Wyndham High School. The last thing I have to tell you is that we do have a budget. Barbara, we have a budget. We got a $5,000 budget from the town council. Rah, rah, that makes us real. And I have a plan to spend at least half of it that I will share with you, but you have to say yes to, because I have spoken with Debbie Irving's representative, and Debbie Irving will be coming to Mansfield to do a book discussion on Waking Up White sometime very early in November. And prior to that time, we're going to have a book group sponsored by the library, 2 sessions in the beginning of October and the end of October. And the dates and the publicity will be coming out after Labor Day. The dates have already been chosen. So we're going to have a book group. The library has copies of this book. We're going to have people talking about what does it mean to be white, which I kind of think is a foundational conversation in this town, because white is a thing, and a lot of people don't realize that. And then when they talked about it and struggled with the book, Debbie Irving, who is a wonderful speaker, is going to come and say, I'm a good person. What else do you want from me? Which is her intro presentation. She's really good. And so she's going to spend about 3 hours talking to the public and talking about her book, and that's going to be very exciting. So that's my development. I've been talking about this for 2 years, and we finally got the money to do it, so I have to tell you about it. That's all I have to say. What do other people have to say? Especially the visitors, the members of the public. Would you like to ask anything about the work that we're planning to do this year? Or anything else that we have done?
Jane, can I ask y'all a quick logistics question with Celebrate Mansfield?
Oh, sure.
Because logistics is what I do. I know last year HRC borrowed the Youth Service Bureau's pop-up tent. Would you all like to borrow that again this year?
Barbara, you're in charge.
I guess so. The only thing I did was contact them and make sure we had our table, which is all set.
Okay. Well, would we like a tent?
We had one last year, so maybe,
Same
sure,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Katie.
Just
Speaking of
shoot
which,
me an email and we'll coordinate pickup as we get closer.
Yeah.
I have one other thing that I'm just putting on the calendar. Last year, we got into all kind of scheduling mess about the conflict in dates between Juneteenth, Pride Week, graduation, and a half a dozen other things that were all going on the same weekend of Father's Day. And now we know in advance that there will be scheduling difficulties and we don't want to shortchange anybody. So I want us, Juneteenth is a designated day. So we're not going to change that, but we also need to think about the fact that there are other events that happen at that time and we don't want anything to interfere with anything else. So just let that mull around in your head, and because we're going to have to do something to make sure everybody gets paid attention to. Katie.
I can give you the tentative date for Celebrate Pride already for this
Does
coming
it conflict with Juneteenth or is it
year.
close?
It should not. Our tentative date is Friday, June 9th.
Oh, good. Okay. June 9. And it's only going to be one day?
I think we are still planning for it to be a Friday evening event rather than an all-day Saturday event, but
Okay.
there's already other schemes happening because that's what happens when people walk into my office. There's schemes.
New ideas and everybody talks to everybody and you never know what's going to come out. But I don't want us to get in a situation where we're shortchanging anybody because the dates overlap. So that's just the thing. Are there any comments from any subcommittees? I have a thing on my agenda about charge changes. Amy, oh, okay. Monica, go ahead.
So the charge changes, I think we're gonna have to wait and table because we don't have a quorum again. But as for the subcommittees, we are going to run into an issue because everyone who's resigned is a part of the town charge subcommittee. So now we only have a 2-person committee, and that really can't happen.
It's not exactly a committee.
Right, exactly. So maybe for next meeting, we can think about how we're going to restructure, or if we can get more people, into the spots, because we have 3 open spots. Then we can, fill them into that committee.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that because I wondered if the first thing in our mission is public education. So we can't get rid of the education committee, but the town charge committee, I don't know if that's an ongoing thing or if that's something that we could just kind of merge and operate as a committee of the whole and have individuals take responsibility for different projects. So we'll have to think about that a little bit more.
Yeah.
I'm very mindful of the fact that we have a member who's been appointed who has not attended. She attended the first meeting and didn't come anymore and hasn't been responsive. So I don't know what that's about, but I will have to call her, find out what's going on there. Are there other comments or thoughts that people have that you want to share?
This is just an aside. I forwarded an email to Felicia and Derek to update the calendar that we're working on when Peter was talking about being mindful of holidays and what have you. UConn just sent something out a couple weeks ago. So I forwarded that with a couple of dates that I was not aware of yet. So
Thank
hopefully
you.
we can add those.
Peter, I have sent a message way back last March to the downtown partnership about the fact that our holiday celebration in the winter looked awfully like Christmas. And what could we possibly do? And apparently there were Muslim people who live in Mansfield who expressed a concern about even attending because they perceive that as a hostile environment. And I don't know who they were, so I didn't have a chance to talk to them. But I would like us to follow up on that pretty soon because they'll be planning that fairly soon. And green trees and Christmas come from Germany and Christianity, and maybe, and holidays in every religion in the world has a winter solstice holiday. So let's try to figure out how we can do that and include everybody. So that's, yes, Peter, thank you.
Yeah, so you know what I think a good move is to try to help think about planning these things in different months, you know, so celebrations can happen in January, just like school concerts can happen in January. They don't have to happen in December. And I know from, you know, just the performance aspect, it's tempting to do holiday music, and there is awesome music out there. But it's not the only way to construct a, you know, a celebration or a concert or an event. And so, you know, one of the ways to think about this is to help people plan it in different months, because there's a default kind of thing that just happens when you put something in December. People are wearing their ugly Christmas sweaters, you know, it just happens. You know, and it is a mind shift, you know, and I think that's the discomfort that sometimes people have, and they love their traditions, and traditions are great. It's not about that. It's about maybe creating new traditions that are, you know, that are timed in a way so that they don't lend themselves or fall into the trap. You know, it's like creating a community dinner in late Thanksgiving. You know, inevitably you're going to see Thanksgiving themed kind of decorations. So just a thought. I need to take that on, you know, that advice too, you know, that we often plan things that lend themselves to traditional holidays and thinking.
I'll second that. I managed to teach 37 years in Mansfield without ever teaching any Christmas music to my violin students. It's not that hard to do. It really isn't. There's plenty of other music out there. While I'm talking, can I just ask, do we have a meeting next week for the outreach committee?
Well,
Okay, because I have some stuff for that, but I'll wait for that.
It's scheduled. I think we should keep it on the calendar and see if we get a quorum to that one, and then try to kick it all back into action in September.
Okay.
Because we're not at liberty just to cancel things that are on the calendar, but I'm not optimistic either.
Okay.
I keep thinking, how could you have a celebration in winter that would include everybody? Everybody doesn't even have winter at the same time. But I'm sure we can come up with a few things. Yeah, go ahead, Katie.
Can we just have a bonfire? Can we just have a solstice bonfire? Can we light something on fire? Can we say goodbye to the old, welcome the new?
Yeah.
You gotta be careful you don't run into pagan people saying,
I mean,
oh, now they're doing pagan
Who are we gonna
ceremonies.
burn
So-
on the bonfire?
I mean, like, they might enjoy it. I might know some pagans who might think that's really cool.
That's an excellent point, by the way, Jane, about not having like winter versus summer. It's winter where my relatives are. I was born in Peru, so.
Right, so it's a completely reverse thing. Yeah, I've always wondered what winter in Australia would look, what Christmas in Australia would look like, and they still have green Christmas trees, and what an imposition. It's not the same. So anyway, but this, I mean, we are having to rewire our brains to comprehend the fact that Eurocentrism isn't the way to see the world. It is a way to see the world. It has been in charge of a lot of the world, and it's not anymore. And neither are we. So what are we going to do to broaden our own thinking so we can include everybody and not be scared of each other? That's the question. I think that, yeah, that's the question. And it's very hard. I wouldn't say it's easy. It's not easy at all. Other comments, thoughts? All right, the one thing I did want to do on this, oh, wait a minute, Katie, go ahead.
I always have comments. One of the things that
Wiccans, what?
One of the things that youth services had wanted to do this summer, but we are postponing until the fall date to be determined, probably not trying to line it up for Thanksgiving for all of the reasons that we're kind of talking about here. But we are looking at doing a community cookbook project where members of the community are invited to prepare a dish that's special to their family, whether it's culturally heritage or not, but something that they like to cook, something that brings them joy, and then share the recipe with us, and then bring that into a community dinner and have the recipes available for everyone to have a copy of every recipe of every food that's there. To kind of build a project of a community cookbook. And that's something we're working on with Margaret a little bit through her work and kind of doing some partnership there. So be on the lookout for that when that gets rescheduled. It turns out nobody wants to cook things and hang out inside in the summer. So we had like one RSVP, but we'll be back with that idea, and we'll have Peter join us for that one. He was gracious enough to be on our schedule and to be flexible with our less than wanted participation.
Well, those kinds of projects are always wonderful. When you bring people together to eat, it's always good. It's always good. Okay, I had something else, but it's gone now. So anyway, for visitors, you just heard we have 3 vacancies on this committee. So if you think that oh, I know what I was going to say. What I want our group to do, and we'll do this in September, is we have a mission statement we got from the town, but we really need to talk about what are you doing here and why do you want to be on this commission and what do you hope to contribute to the town? And we all need to hear what everybody thinks about that. But I don't want to do that until we have maximum membership, okay? But be thinking about what do we need a Human Rights Commission for anyhow? All the nice, white, straight, fully able-bodied Christian people in town are perfectly happy, and there's more of them than any other kind. So what do we need a Human Rights Commission for? We need it because there's the other people, and we need to be conscious of why we need it. So please give that some thought, because that is the conversation that I wanted to have, and I want as many people as possible to participate in it. So thank you all. Visitors, please go fill out the forms, go get interviewed, and we hope to see you next time. Any other comments for the good of the order? I would like to call, will somebody, oh, we don't have to adjourn because we never came into meeting. We're done. See you in a month.
Velda,
Thank you,
Nice
Jane.
to meet you all.
Velda, do you have something?
Well, I just have a quick question in terms of, Jane, you made a comment about go get interview. What's the process? Who interviews you? An applicant, yeah.
Okay,
You want me
yes,
to?
please, Monica, tell her.
Okay, so first you fill out the form expressing your interest in the Human Rights
Where
Commission,
did you
which
get the form? Velda has been having trouble finding it.
I'm happy to email that to you. I believe I have your email. So I can do that before I leave tonight. You'll fill out that form, and then the town clerk gets in touch with you. She'll probably ask you if you've attended the meeting. Just let her know that you attended tonight and that you're still interested. And then the Committee on Committees, which is the town council's committee who would appoint you, interviews you to see, that you're interested in the position. And then they'll recommend you to be appointed.
Thank you.
I'd like the application too, please.
Okay, yes, hold on. I'm just gonna write down everybody's name and I will send that out to everyone's name.
Thank you very much. All right, and it's in the chat, the link to the form, okay? All right, well, I hope that it's going to get cooler and that you're all going to have a very pleasant next couple of weeks, and I will see some of you next week and the rest of you in a month. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.